This version of the story likely won't lead up to the warlord system being dissolved, since Straw Hats aren't there to uncover Doflamingo's plans. Another thing is that Marines aren't allowed to fight the Emperors most of the time. Without both Emperors and warlords to fight, Luffy's missions would mostly consist of defeating weak pirates or protecting celestial dragons. So, in order for Luffy to face off against stronger enemies, I think it's safe to assume that he would join Sword. Joining Sword also seems like something Luffy would like to do, as he would be able to do much more good than before. Still, without his crew, it's highly unlikely Luffy would ever engage an Emperor simply because he wouldn't stand a chance on his own. Some years later, once Luffy is 19, the same age he is post-time skip, he would become the Sword's captain, and one of the most influential members alongside Garp. It's likely that he would develop his Haki and Devil Fruit even more during this time, which would make him one of the strongest Marines in the world. However, despite this, he still wouldn't be as strong as his main story self because of this one reason. You see, in the main story, Luffy was constantly fighting many people who were clearly stronger than him, like Doflamingo, Big Mom, or Kaido. These fights pushed his skills to their absolute limits, which allowed him to quickly evolve and adapt his fighting style, Devil Fruit abilities, and Haki. Considering that in this version of the story, Luffy didn't go through all of those near-death experiences, there's just no way he would be as strong as he currently is. He might get stronger eventually if he ever winds up clashing against Emperors of the Sea, but the chance that he'll ever achieve Gear 5 in this scenario is not very big. And finally, let's see what would have happened if Luffy was trained by the world's strongest swordsman, Dracul Mihawk. As unlikely as it would be to happen, if Luffy was trained by Mihawk, there's a high chance he would outclass any other version of himself. I mean, just imagine combining Luffy's Devil Fruit abilities with Mihawk's insane swordsmanship. He would be unstoppable. Luffy's training would start in a similar way as Zoro's in this version of the story. He'll first have to prove himself by defeating the human drills of Gloom Island. Although it'll take him a few months, Luffy will eventually tame the beasts and officially start his training. Mihawk will teach Luffy how to wield a sword properly, everything involved with being a swordsman, and the basics of Haki. Training with swords would mean that Luffy would unlock advanced armament Haki much earlier than expected. Not only that, after sensing Luffy's impressive level of Conqueror's Haki, Mihawk might even go the extra mile and teach his new disciple some truly devastating sword attacks. To put this into perspective, Zoro only spent 2 years with Mihawk and became strong enough to even cut through Kaido's impenetrable skin. So just imagine everything Luffy could achieve. Training with Mihawk would quickly turn Luffy into a fearsome fighter who would possibly be stronger than any of the previous versions we covered. Since Mihawk was a warlord at the time, Luffy will wind up accompanying him on important world government missions, which would give him some real-world experience. It'll also be during one of these missions when Luffy will find a graded blade to call his own. Obviously, this wouldn't be a supreme grade blade or anything crazy like that, but it would definitely be a decent sword, similar to the one Zoro is carrying. Considering Mihawk doesn't like to be ordered around, it's likely that once Luffy gains enough experience, he will wind up executing Mihawk's orders on his own. He'll travel the Grand Line hunting down weaker pirates like Don Krieg or assisting the Marines if needed. With so much traveling up and down the Grand Line, Luffy will pick up a ton of experience very fast and even make a name for himself. After some time, Luffy would meet Shanks and the red-haired pirates while traveling with Mihawk. While his mentor is sparring with Shanks, Luffy might try his chances against Building Snake, who seems to be a swordsman on Shanks' crew. Whether he would be able to actually win this fight, we don't know, but it should be pretty close considering Luffy's skills in this version of the story. Once the government calls all warlords to Marineford, Luffy would accompany Mihawk there as well, where he'd get the chance to fight some of Whitebeard's crew officers like Vista or Jozu. These fights would push Luffy to his limits, but he would also learn a great deal from them. By the time Luffy is the same age as his current self, he would be even stronger than the main story Zoro, since he spent the majority of his life training under Mihawk personally. After learning everything he possibly can from Mihawk, this version of Luffy will make it his mission to challenge as many powerful swordsmen as he can find. His journey will eventually lead him to Wano, where he'll learn the origins of the strongest blades in the One Piece world. While there, he would probably challenge some samurai and get his hands on some really powerful, great-grade blades. After traveling the Four Blues and amassing a collection of strong swords, Luffy will make his way back to Mihawk, with a blade turned black from the amount of Haki imbued into it. Eventually, several years down the line, this version of Luffy can potentially beat Mihawk and become the world's strongest swordsman. Considering how OP Haki and swords are in the One Piece world, we can easily assume that this version of Luffy has the potential to clearly be the strongest character in the series, possibly even stronger than the main story self.